It is bright and early here in Canada. The sun is coming up, and I know that we are from all parts of the world. So I just would like to, one of the ways that we often introduce ourselves in Canada is also from where we are located. So Jesse and I and Vanessa are all located on Vancouver Island, and we respectfully acknowledge that this is the Sunamo First Nations people land. And our location is Nanaimo, British Columbia, which is actually an island. It's a very large island. It would be the same size as actually the Netherlands. We have almost 700,000 people on the island, and the Netherlands would have 16 million, I believe, or maybe 17 million. So we live in a very beautiful, rich location in the world, and lots of opportunity for recreation. So I'd like to introduce you today to what is called the Recreation Prescription Project. I'm going to share screen, and I'm going to share slide. All right. Everyone can see that? Yeah? You can see my very first slide? Okay, excellent.
Very good. Very clear.
Good. Thank you, Peter. Nice to see you, Peter, too, and everyone that's here.
Yeah,
All right, so let me tell you about the Recreation Prescription Project. As Jesse introduced me, I do come from municipal recreation. I worked in that field for 20 years and now have been in academia for 20 years. And wow, that makes me feel really old when I hear those numbers. But what it has done is it has given me what I call a pracademic approach to all that I do, practice and academics. And this project comes from years of relationships within the community, and then making that connection to academia. So it's important. I just want to acknowledge who is here as partners, as that is a very important part of the project. This is an interdisciplinary, intersectoral, collaborative partnership project that included what is considered our health authority, Island Health. It included the Division of Family Practice, which is the doctors within Island Health, the Parks, Recreation and Culture, and the school district and the university. So there are many, many moving parts to this project. So what am I going to do? I'm going to describe the Recreation Prescription Project. I'm going to talk about evidence and how we created that, trends when we think about prescription, and then where we've come and where we're going to. So this started in this research actually happened in 2018, but I can tell you the building of it was many, many years prior to that. All right, so Recreation Prescription Project, what is it? In the city of Nanaimo, Parks, Recreation and Culture, they had a project that they worked with doctors within the region, and they were prescribing recreation. And it was going for a few years, and this is actually a trend we see across North America, where we're seeing the healthcare get connected to municipal recreation departments by prescribing recreation. But it was kind of met with minimal impact, meaning the clients they were giving it to were not using it, or they were already active users, or it just kind of just sort of what I would say was a vanilla response. It just really didn't go anywhere. And so that kind of ended. And I ended up coming into the project as it was ending. And there was about 20 people that were on a committee trying to make this thing happen. And it was just, quite frankly, too many people trying to move a great initiative forward, and it fell through. So I was interested in putting some research behind it. I pulled together 6 key people, and that was someone from the school district, someone from the city, Parks and Recreation, myself from the university, and then a few physicians, local doctors. And so we sort of created this think tank and said, okay, what can we do? So the idea of moving the prescription forward really sped up, and all of a sudden we were able to give it some structure. I applied for a research grant and we had some money behind it, so we were able to really put some structure to it. Now, I'd like you, if you can, go into the chat and tell me if you have any experience in your community or your region, maybe even your country, where you have seen doctors prescribing something. Okay, could be anything. If you have any context for that, just go ahead, use the chat, and we'll see if anybody does, or if you've heard of this, where a doctor is prescribing some form, some prescription that's related to maybe recreation or leisure. So in Brazil, no. No, not in Spain. South Africa, no. Okay. Not in Malaysia, no. So this is maybe a new kind of concept for us here in this virtual meeting today. So I'm seeing no, no, no. Anybody have any context? Mental health? Okay. Hungary, no. Okay. So this is great. It's as far as, you know, our discussion today, it means it's new information or a new idea. This is trending. It is really picking up movement, and we're seeing prescriptions being offered in many areas. Oh, my slide is not wanting to advance. Okay, hold on. I'm going to stop share for a moment. I'll go back into my slide and okay. In Scotland, we're seeing doctors are beginning to prescribe what's called rambling and bird watching. In the UK, we are seeing a project where it's called Forget the Pills, Try Playing Bingo. In Canada here, this is actually in Montreal, we're seeing art galleries, and doctors are prescribing going to art galleries instead of forms of medication. This is very big in North America, Australia, New Zealand. Prescriptions find a local nature base, find a park. Campology, prescription to health, go camping. So what happens is we're seeing a real trend of healthcare connecting to leisure. And we really use the term of recreation, and this is where the recreation prescription comes in. So it's called social prescribing. This is the crux of the idea behind social prescribing. It's a growing social wellness movement that is seeing doctors issue their patients a prescription for everything from exercise classes, nature walks, choir, pottery lessons. Okay, so now that we know that there's a trend in prescribing recreation, and there are projects out there, in the United States, you can actually, a doctor will prescribe going to a local park. An individual can go to that park. There's an app, and they can actually put in the park that they're at and how long they were there, 20 minutes or 30 minutes, and that gets uploaded back to the healthcare system, to the doctor. So they can actually see that you have used that prescription, which is very cool. So if you think that the minute you go if the doctor prescribed pills and you go pick them up, they can also see that you have filled that prescription, but now they could actually see that you've filled the prescription by going to the park. So how do we define health and well-being? With so many different aspects of health, gaining a consensus on the definition of well-being is really an elusive challenge in itself. We know that obviously health and well-being, when individuals are healthy and have a strong well-being, they reduce pressure on the healthcare system. We know that in children, play is an integral part of their social development, their physical development, and it's embedded in what we call Article 31 in the Convention on the Rights of a Child. Let me just say that again in case you want to grab that, which is Article 31 in the Convention on the Rights of a Child. So if you wanted to look that up, you would see there are many articles, but that particular article speaks specifically to the right of a child to play freely. All right, so what was the research about? Well, once we got this team of about 6 people together, we said, what is it that we really want to find out? This was our research question and our 2 objectives. To what extent can that intersectoral intervention of recreation prescription influence health and well-being of grade 5 students? Now, before I go on, it would be, why grade 5? Why that age group? That child is about 10 years old. And we know that they are, from a recreation perspective, they are still joiners. A child who's 10, if we said, let's go rock climbing, they would go do, 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 up the rock wall. I'll try it. Give them another year, perhaps when they're 11, 12, or 13, and a lot of peer pressure comes into play. So from a recreation perspective, there's a lot of research that tells us that 10-year-old is still willing to try, willing to join. So it is an influencer age. And when we think of health and well-being, if we have a child that's headed on an ill health trajectory, meaning perhaps their socioeconomic environments, their role modeling, their access to recreation is on an ill health trajectory. That means if they keep going the way they're going, they are headed into ill health. And we have the ability when they're 10 to start to influence that, because they're headed into their peer years, peer influence, and they can, if they choose to, they can influence and start to make choices themselves once they come into their, what we would call high school years, grade, or when they're 13, 14, 15, which for us in Canada would be potentially grade 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. All right. So this research was very interested in 2 things: the intervention itself, actually using recreation, and secondly, really interested in interdisciplinary and intersectoral collaboration. So let's move on. All right. So what did we actually do? Well, we participated with the school district. There was 5 schools initially that were going to participate, and 3 elementary schools ended up being partners. We had 120 participants, and of those, 121 were participating, consenting research participants. Now, those numbers might not seem high from a research, but what is critical to understand is these are our most vulnerable schools, our most vulnerable population within the region where we are living right now. And so to have 101 parents or role models, whoever was the caregiver for that child, say, yes, I'll let my child participate in a research project, was very huge. And also consider that this was a pilot project. So we were very interested in 3 things: physical activity, social connectedness, and mental health. Looking at it from an ecological perspective, using what we call an ecological methodology. Okay, so you can see the things we were focusing on in that list. All right, so here is where we see our ecological methodology, our ecological systems theory, it's called. So if you think of science and ecology, science ecology, so hard science, would say how organisms interact. Okay, if we think of social science, that human behavior, it's how systems interact. So if we look at that 10-year-old child, we know that the systems that they're involved in, or the ecologies, are listed in the blue. So individual, family, peer, school, community, culture, technology, health systems. And the dimensions fall under 5 dimensions for that child, or an individual or an adult, but specifically this research is for the child. So here we can see it in a different format where we see that ecological systems theory has 5 components to it. This research focused on only 3 of them. So the parameters we were interested in social relationships, in physical health and well-being, and in mental and emotional. So we did not touch the pink and the purple squares. We were only in this research looking at the green, the blue, and the yellow, the social, the physical, and the mental. And we didn't call it mental health, we called it mental fitness. We changed the word, we were looking at the mental fitness of youth, not mental health. Even though it was mental health, we flipped that term. Okay, so in Canada, and I would encourage you to take a look, after this presentation, perhaps, we have what is called the National Recreation Framework. And that framework we started in 2010 in Canada, and in 2015, it became adopted as a nation. And it is based in these values. If you look here, public good, inclusion and equity, sustainability, and lifelong participation. So we took this umbrella of the National Recreation Framework, and we put it over top of the research project, looking for our principles that our research helped to, it became evidence-based, it was partnership, it was about innovation and outcome-driven. Okay. While it is well established that the need to initiate positive development courses begin in early childhood for a child, less is known or understood sort of about that trajectory and what sustains healthy trajectory. We definitely know, and the research tells us, that recreation is good for health, mental health, physical health, social, all of that. Specifically, the 10-year-old and that developmental age was what we were interested in, as I've said. And so that's what we were curious about, is how recreation can be used and how intersectoral the different disciplines, including child and youth care, physical education, recreation, and nursing students. So this is what makes up the National Recreation Framework, these 5 pillars in Canada. And the research project hit every one of these pillars. We were looking at active living. We were looking at, because these youth come from a socioeconomically challenged environment, we knew that recreation access, we had this great idea of, providing recreation for them, but if they arrive and they don't actually have a pair of shoes that they can wear to play soccer, now our idea of soccer is no longer beneficial. So it became very clear that access to just even a good pair of running shoes for some of these children was an inhibitor. Okay. Nature-based is a critical part of the project, and within Canada and within the curriculum of education today is that it is emphasized that nature-based education is mandatory. So we're seeing more and more, and that's within British Columbia, and that is a fairly new announcement within our province that nature-based education needs to be embedded in all subjects, not just physical education. Okay, so what did this actually look like? So we had 120 children, 3 schools. They had to be, the research asked the parent to fill out a very complicated, and I won't even get into how difficult it was to make it through ethics, research ethics, because I hit every possible target there was. A child who was vulnerable. We were going to actually physically touch them. We were going to assess their health. And we needed to have a parent say that all of those things were okay. And the parent might have, and remember, the parent falls into a bracket of socioeconomically challenged. So even their interests in having their child involved in this is vulnerable. So 3 schools, these children, and there was 3 data points. It was a complex research. It was a pre, mid, and post health assessment. So the doctors became involved with the nursing students from the university, and they did height, weight, blood pressure, and a few other health assessments. They did that pre 16-week recreation program, mid, and post. So there were 3 data points there. Then the children participated in 2 wellness surveys, pre and post, and then they did photo voice methodology, which was the kids all got cameras. They took pictures of what they thought was healthy lifestyles, which was really cool. Okay, so here's our collaboration, and we were very interested in systemic change. So we see Parks, Recreation, and Culture. They came with a very, from a recreation perspective, they had the facilities that we use, they had expertise in programming, and they come with a real lens of leisure continuity, or introduce a child to recreation young, and we hope that they take it through their lives. Then we had the primary healthcare providers, the doctors, and they come with a lens of population health, social determinants of health. The school district was our access to the schools, our access to the teachers, and our access to the child and the parent. And then we had the VIU team, which was Vancouver Island University. And within that team, we were interdisciplinary. So we had nursing students, child and youth care, physical education, and recreation students. Okay, what did we learn from 2018 to 2019? In that initial pilot project? Children are resilient. Yes, recreation we know is a strong factor for them, but they need support. They need role modeling. They need systems that help them to gain access to recreation. We found out interdisciplinary that each discipline talks different language, and we've just got to create a trusting environment where we can bring all of our disciplines together. It was really important that we made it very easy for all the partners to be involved, because it was complex, a lot of moving parts, and obviously communication was critical to all of that, making sure that communication was easy for all the partners. We know it was a small window for data collection. It went from September, it was an academic school year, so September to May. And what we found, what we sort of knew as researchers is that, it wouldn't be enough to really see, was there a pre and a post? Did recreation really change their health? We knew it was too short of a data collection, but it was intended to be pilot, and it built the first stage for us. To address systemic, we need to really get to the voices from the children and grassroots. And this idea of softening up your ideas. This project started in 2018, but I can tell you, I had 20 years of experience with all the partners before that, and probably about 3 years of conversation before we ever even got to an ethics application and a research project. It takes time. Okay, and last slide here, and then I want to show you some of the pictures that the children took through their photo voice, which was the cameras that they were given. I believe that the field of recreation has turned a corner where it's not a nice to have, but it's a need to have. We know that it is not just important for us to have access to recreation, but it can create benefits, yes, but it can actually address complex social issues. And it can address those, then we contribute solutions through recreation. It's important to remove barriers for these youth, and even example of their shoes. Intersectoral and interdisciplinary is important for systemic change. So when we look at health and well-being, it is not just the field of recreation that can solve that. It's not just the field of healthcare, doctors. It's not education. We need all of these disciplines together. Okay, and that we've got to share our knowledge. We need greater evidence. We need to give that language to our practitioners so that that can influence policy. And that recreation, just confirming that it is used and can be used as a powerful mechanism for intervention. All right, I'm going to stop share. And I know we want to make sure to save time for questions at the end. I just have some slides which I'm going to show you in 6 minutes. These are the pictures that the youth themselves took. This presentation is a pecha. It means that it is 20 images in 20 seconds each. It's a concise, quick way to give you some information. And just to let you know that all of the pictures you are going to see were taken by the youth in this research project. They were asked a number of questions, but these pictures reflect what does a healthy lifestyle look like and what does an unhealthy lifestyle look like. All right, so we've just got 6 minutes. If I do it right, I follow the slides and tell you a little bit of a story as we go through it, and then I'll stop. That should bring us to the end of my presentation and your chance to ask questions. So let me share the pecha. All right, let me go. Recreation is a preventative health field. It's solutions-based, and this project was 360 lens in the community, which was addressing systemic issues in health and well-being. This is me and my baby shark playing basketball in the outdoors from Alex. Sometimes I only have my basketball and my baby shark to play with. The questions that we explored were, to what extent can an intersectoral intervention of recreation prescription influence health and well-being in grade 5 students? And we were looking at how to access health and well-being improvements through recreation and this idea of intersectoral and interdisciplinary. 3 schools, our most vulnerable population in Nanaimo. They have the potential of heading on an ill health trajectory. 120 children were involved. 101 of them were consenting participants. How did we walk this out? Well, it was 16 weeks of a recreation program, 3 data points, pre, mid, and post health assessment, as I'd said before, pre and post wellness survey, and self-reported photographic evidence, which are the pictures that these youth took of themselves. Kids ultimately desire to be healthy. They are innately playful, they are curious, and they are at a complex developmental stage at 10 years old. Using the ecological systems approach, we know these kids are embedded and interacting as individuals, peers, families, and within their community. The goals of the project were embedded in the National Recreation Framework for Canada, addressing 3 things. We were interested in social connectedness regarding health and well-being, influencing health and well-being, physical activity, and mental health, which we called mental fitness. One of our priorities was active transportation, hiking, walking, biking, moving with our feet and our backpacks. Connection to nature, inclusion and access, collaborative systems, access to healthy food, nutrition, and digital detox. Here we see 25 what they were called healthy role models. This was an interdisciplinary team made up of university students coming from child and youth care, nursing program, physical education program, recreation, and education. Thumbs up for collaboration. This was made possible through a grant that came from the Island Health Wellness Grant. And as I've mentioned before, it was made up of partners, it was collaborative, and a key component was our recreation places and spaces. So what did we do? Recreation isn't just fun and games, but when planned purposefully, it has power. It was 2 hours per week during the school hours. And for us, that is huge that we were able to get into the school system during their school day. This was not done after school. Junior joiners, we call them. Age 10 is critical. They still are willing to join. The literature supports the impact recreation can have to a 10-year-old. They're willing to try. Peer pressure has not yet kicked in. What we know we need is a longitudinal study, grade 6, grade 5, grade 6, and grade 7. This is a picture from one of the kids talking about playing video games and how much he plays video games. And through the research project, realized I can't believe how much time I spend in front of my computer or on my phone playing video games. We know that 74% of boys exceed the recommended 2 hours per day of recreational screen time, and 52% of girls. These are pictures kids took of sugary drinks. 82% of girls eat 1 or more sugary candy per day. 65% of boys eat 1 or more sugary candy drinks per day. 35% of the boys in our study live in tobacco environments, and 40% of the girls. Parks and recreation organizations, primarily public agencies, play a role in facilitating and managing opportunities to be recreationally active. So spaces and places is critical. A picture of sugary drinks thrown away in the field at their playground. 54% of boys were overweight or obese, and 55% of the girls. Now we have to be careful to interpret that cautiously because they are in their developmental stage. Access and inclusion hit this research project square in the face. Kids arrived without proper jackets, shoes, clothes, food, nutrition. So we have to be aware that when we use recreation as intervention, we have to address the systemic issues at the root of that. We know we're moving in the right direction. It was a proof of concept. The project continued on. It's moved into another project called Shed Your Threads. And now in the pandemic, it moved into what is called a GIS mapping project. And we keep moving forward. Research funding has continued to come in as the pilot project evidenced to us that we need to keep doing this work to really probe the systemic issues and root causes in health and well-being in our community. This is messy work. You've got to get right to the grassroots. You've got to get to systemic change. It's complex. Recreation as an intervention for health inequities reflects the emerging shift toward a collaborative approach. Social well-being, prescribing recreation. The field talks, the different disciplines talk different language. Social determinants of health, leisure continuity, physical movement, physical literacy, protective factors, emotional and behavioral specialists. All of those made up the disciplines that informed the research and informed the project. And we need each other stronger together. There we go. 6:45 for me in the morning. And that allows us 15 minutes of questions yet. So thank you for the opportunity to quite quickly, I think, go through that. Have any of you seen a Pechacucha before? Thumbs up if you have, or was that a new? Some of you have? Yeah. So you see in that Pechacucha, there's no, the 20 slides, 20 images, 20 seconds per slide. There's no words on the slide. And it's really powerful when you think that the kids took all those pictures. So what questions do you have for me?
Can I congratulate you and make a beautiful presentation? Your 45 minutes equal to 2 years course in university. Congratulations. You did very, very well indeed. Can I ask you one question? In your age, when you're about 30 years old, what kind of 3 major activity you do as a recreational activities? Please share.
Let me make sure I heard the question. Are you asking me what recreational activities I did when I was 30?
You are now 30, so.
I wish I was 30. Well, for me personally, I have always been very recreationally active, and that's what informs my interest in recreation as intervention. I worked in municipal recreation for many, many years. And for me, nature-based activities, being in the outdoors, and that's one of the, influences in the research, is getting children into outdoor places and spaces. And that doesn't just mean a park, but places in nature so that they can learn. Yeah. Does that help, Peter?
Yes. We do. I'm 87 now, so I do a little bit walk in the park, beach, mountain, a peaceful place.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for your wonderful presentation. Enjoy, although it's nearly 2 a.m. in New Zealand. I'm still very awake. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter, for joining us. That's wonderful. Other questions?
Yeah, I would like to have a question, and congratulations, Joanne. I think you make amazing report what's happening on the island. But I'm working for a faculty called Health and Sports Science faculty. And the dean is a medical doctor. And he said to me, Miklos, teach me about the concept of recreation. And do you think that I can do it? No, they don't believe in us. How could you reach to start a cooperation with the medical doctors?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, Miklos. And I can tell you that I worked in municipal recreation for over 20 years before coming into academia. And I always felt like recreation was the little cousin that kind of fell underneath healthcare. And yet I strongly believe that recreation is a preventative health field and that we should be an essential service as much as policing and healthcare. But don't even let me get on my podium, or I'll take the rest of the time on that particular topic. But I always felt like we could never get through the message of we are a preventative health field. We contribute to complex social issues. Take obesity in childhood as an example. We know that the application of recreation improves health and can reduce child obesity and therefore the costs on medical care. So Miklos, in 2010, I was a part of the creation of the National Recreation Framework in Canada. And it was a conversation of 200 interdisciplinary. There was physicians, there was child and youth care workers, there were community planners, there was Indigenous population representation, there were architects, there were like the medical field was there. It was a huge perspective. And a physician stood up and he said, hands up, recreation people in the room. You are the solution to our health crisis. And this was in 2010 in Canada when child obesity was the crisis. Now we see opioids and street drugs as a crisis. But in 2010, it was child obesity. And it was a flip for me. And I was like, yes, finally, the healthcare system, hears us. And at the same time, I felt sad. Like, why has it taken this long? But it was because the healthcare finally realized they needed us. They needed us. Before that, it was a nice to have. It was beneficial. It was if you had access to recreation. But all of a sudden, there was this flip. And it was, we're in a crisis and we need an answer. And that's when they said, hands up. And you have seen a huge shift in 10 years. Well, sorry, since 2010, even before then. But the movement, Miklos, was that the healthcare is now really coming together. We see it in Canada and in North America. And it has to be a shift of approach. So just don't give up. That would be my sense. Keep moving forward. Keep bringing those conversations together. And now those doctors are looking to us and saying, what do you have for us that we can continue to push forward? But they need the research. They need a project like this that shows interdisciplinary and it's practical, that the partners can pick up on it, the researchers can pick up on it, the doctors can pick up on it, and the school system. So the child, we're seeing impact.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Jesse, just lead.
Wonderful. Yeah, I actually had another question, and thank you again for your presentation. My question would be, what is something that surprised you, or something that you didn't think you were going to learn from this project that you could share with us?
Yeah. What was absolutely enjoyable to me, and I'm not so much of a surprise, but just the aha, was bringing the interdisciplinary students together at university. So we had, again, child and youth care, nursing students, education students, physical education students, and recreation and tourism students. So we brought all those students together, and they said, and they all were after the same thing, which is health and well-being of youth, but they come at it from different lenses. And all of them said, why have I not in my education been having this kind of interdisciplinary conversation and learning from these other disciplines? And it was an aha for them that, man, when I become a practitioner or a professional, I have to address these issues with the other disciplines. And so I wasn't surprised by that. I knew that, but I was taken aback again by how our education system, higher education system, has to break down these discipline silos. And we have to be having these conversations as disciplines so that, when we're looking at health and well-being, we know that the child and youth care profession, which really looks at emotional and behavior aspects and protective factors, we have to look at the education models, we have to look at leisure and recreation, physical activity, nursing, right? Social determinants of health, population health. We have to bring all of these together, and we have to learn how to work together in the sandbox, play in the same sandbox to get the results we're looking for. Yeah, good question. Thanks, Jesse.
No worries. Thank you. That was a
Joanne,
good answer.
yep. I have one or two questions. First is we know that recreation activities is so broad, and so all this health, I've been involved in youth development issues. So has there been any sort of measure being developed to differentiate, to link up to match certain recreation activity for certain behavior? So for example, we have different recreation preferences, and then we have different issues. So which recreation or sports activity will sort of match, can be used as a prescription, to address certain issue? And of course, my second question is, has all these pandemic restrictions affect your programs? Like for us, there's a lot of movement restrictions, so it's not possible to implement anything here.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Doc Lee, let me just make sure I understand your first question. Your question was saying, we know that the link between recreation and certain activities can have an impact. Is that, and you're asking me about those certain activities or about the impact?
Certain activities will have an impact on certain behavioral problem for prescription.
Right.
So has there been any sort of instrument that can be used to assess which recreation activity is suitable for which behavioral issue?
Okay. Okay, great question. I'm not sure. I mean, in a youth, from a broader perspective, I want to say I have a feeling that there is definitely connection between, we know that, a certain sporting activity or recreational activity impacts behavior. Have we done that in youth? Well, what the literature tells us in youth is that we want to give them a broad spectrum of experience in all kinds of recreational activities, because their development is so broad at that point. Physical development, emotional development, their brain development, everything. And so you want to introduce them to a breadth. And that's the research that I'm very familiar with, is, and it comes from sport. I mean, our sport experts in the room would say that, if you want to train someone to play hockey and become a professional hockey, you make sure that at their young ages, they get ballet and gymnastics and running and culture, arts and culture, because they need that breadth. So it's a very good question. I wish I had a little bit more time to address it, but I do want to go to your COVID question, and I'm aware we're coming to the end of our session. Yes, COVID stopped this research project, basically, dead in the water, because we could not go into schools anymore, but we were in the second phase of the project, which is convene. So once we did the pilot project, we moved into the intersectoral, and we said, okay, what did we learn from that first pilot? And we spent a whole year convening. So we talked to all the partners, everyone involved, parents, and we said, what did we learn? Where do we need to go next? And then when COVID hit and we were ready to go into the next delivery of the project, we couldn't. So we went back to the school, well, to the partners, and we said, okay, what can we do in COVID? And at that point, the teacher said to us, you know what? We have a mandate has been lifted that we can now walk 4 kilometers from our school to take our kids out of these school environments. We need to know what recreational activities or places or spaces we can walk to. So we moved into what's called a GIS mapping, and we were looking at creating, looking at creating an app that allows that teacher to take that child within any direction of 4 kilometers walking. So the active transportation to find those places and spaces. We won't get back into the school in 2021. So hopefully recreation prescription will be picked up in 2022.
Okay, just one last comment. I've put in the chat my email. I hope I can communicate further with you. I know we don't have time here, and then we can discuss through email or whatever other mediums.
Very good. And maybe I will put my, I will quickly put my email in here.
Okay.
And then people can follow up with me if they would like further information. Okay. Thank you for your question, Doc Lee.
Okay, thank you. Welcome.
Beautiful. Thank you, everyone, for contributing some amazing questions. I think it's always good to, take the conversation further after a presentation to learn more about and be more personal with what we are going to find out. But anyways, thank you so much, Joanne, for your time and getting up early to present this one. Start the day off early and nice. For everybody else, I hope you have a wonderful day and a good night. And I'm not sure what's next in this session, but thank you anyways for your time and your amazing work that's current and relevant and is needed. So thank you.
And thank you especially also for the secretariat. Helping with the technical issues, and we have the next presenter next week the same time, and Jane is coming, Jane Joe from Hangzhou and Ariane Rai from Australia. So I think it will be also an exciting session like today. Hopefully, Joanne, you can share your presentation with the group of the people. We learned a lot, definitely. I think everyone agrees on this. And thank you so much for the lovely day, and have a nice day. Thank you so much again. And thank you, Jesse, for moderating. And bye-bye.